We're sitting right now in the middle of the ancient city of Cahal Pech, and we have a whole bunch of different structures here. All of them had different functions. If you look at structure B.V.A.R, that's a small temple on the southeast corner of Plaza B. What is interesting about that little temple is that it had two other buildings that had been constructed over it, but they were poorly preserved and in fact partly looted. And so we peeled off the layers that weren't very well preserved and we exposed that phase that you see today. It's a late pre-classic temple, very likely dating to about the 1st century BC.
And how far does it go back?
Structure B.V.A.R is one of the best examples we have at Cahal Pech for the Maya tradition of building something and using it for a while and then covering it over and then building a whole new building on top and keep doing this for centuries. The first building that was built on that specific site dates to between 1200 and 1100 BC. Thereafter, the Maya constructed 13 more phases on top of that. The phase that you see today is the third last building that was built on that specific location. Okay. Structure B.V.A.R has essentially been excavated solely by the B.V.A.R and B.V.A.R A.F.A.R projects. We began to work there in 1988 and have done excavations there consistently. I'd probably say out of the 20-some years that we have worked at this site, that structure has been the focus of investigations at least half of that time. The conservation of the project was done by some other folks from a different university, and this summer we plan to redo the conservation just because we're not happy with the quality of conservation that was done there. Structure B.V.A.R had some looting. In fact, several buildings at the site of Cahal Pech were unfortunately looted, particularly between the late 1970s and the early 1980s. On structure B.V.A.R, there was a trench from looters that went down all the way from the last construction phase right up to the summit of the late pre-classic building that we see there now. When they were doing that, they missed this burial by probably 10 centimeters to about 7 inches. And then when we began to work there in 88, we cleaned out that looter's trench, and in so doing we exposed a corner of that burial. So thankfully the looters missed that. B.V.A.R has produced some of the most incredible and unique information at the site of Cahal Pech, especially as it pertains to the earliest Maya who established this site as their capital. On that building, way down below, we found evidence of the earliest settlement that dates to about 1200 to 1100 BC. Few sites in the Maya world have produced evidence of occupation going back that far. And then the building continues to be modified right up to about 800 AD. That's almost 2,000 years of continuous occupation. Just incredible, all right? There are no cities in North America that go back more than a few hundred years, to give you an example. We also found in that building the largest collection of pre-classic figurines that have ever been found in the country of Belize. In fact, probably found anywhere in the Maya lowlands. We are now over 1,000 figurine fragments just from that one structure. Another really awesome discovery on that building was done about a few years ago. And what we found was this burial that had been exhumed from somewhere else and then redeposited on the top of the temple. And they put the bones in sort of a square, on four sides, sort of like the quadripartite Maya universe. And then they laid in the middle of it this conch shell crocodile. It's like carved like a crocodile. And then on top of it, they put this big pot. They put a skull with 2 jade beads, and then they put another big pot on top of it. So the skull was within these lip-to-lip vessels. So the skull was sort of like in a cave. And then on the four sides, on each side, they placed a figurine head and the spout of a figurine. Essentially, I think what they were doing is that they were reburying the remains of this revered ancestor who had died perhaps years before. And they placed him sort of like at the center of the universe because he, like the corn god, was going to be reborn again. So just awesome, because this burial dated to sometime, around the 1st century BC. So very early, telling us that this ideology existed long before the classic period.